Hi there, learners. So, as you prepare to write, there are some common errors that we all frequently make. And today we're going to cover these. And what I'm going to ask you to do is when you have finished writing your rough draft, set it aside a minimum of a couple hours, then come back to it, read it out loud slowly as if it's new information to you, or hand it to a friend. But look for each of these grammatical errors. If you can remove these grammatical errors from your writing, you'll have a much improved essay with doing very little work. Even better, consider these errors and try to remove them from your draft before you ever have to get to revision. That would, of course, save you some time. So let's take a look at the 20 most common errors that people make in writing. So the first error, the most common error, according to research at Stanford University, is that we miss the comma after an introductory element. So what does that mean? What is an introductory element? An introductory element is something that starts the sentence off, but is not necessary to it, okay? So if we read these sentences, to tell the truth, I have never liked the Mets. If I remove the phrase to tell the truth, the sentence would simply say, I have never liked the Mets. That is a complete sentence. To tell the truth is an introductory element that provides more information but isn't necessary and therefore needs a comma after it. Okay? Let's go through and see this. Check your sentences to see which ones open with an introductory word, phrase, or clause. Readers usually need a small pause between the introductory element and the main part of the sentence. A pause is most often signaled by a comma. Try to get into the habit of using a comma after every introductory element, be it a word, a phrase, or a clause. When the introductory element is very short, you don't always need a comma after it, but you're never wrong if you do use a comma. So the rule is, the actual grammatical rule is, if you have 4 words in your introductory clause, it is not always necessary to include a comma. So in this sentence, it wouldn't necessarily need to be there to be grammatically correct. However, comma, usually it clarifies your ideas, and sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Additionally, if you don't have a sentence that has lots of other commas in it, it's always better to simply include the comma, okay? Determined to get the job done, we worked all weekend. Again, if we removed the introductory element, it'd simply say, we worked all weekend. It's a complete thought. All this information is extra. Therefore, we need to just get rid of it. All right, we got to go quickly. So let's go on. Vague pronoun reference. Okay, this is huge in writing. Mixing up pronouns or being vague. So let's look at this. There are 2 common kinds of vague pronoun reference. The first occurs when there is more than one word that the pronoun might refer to, and the second is when the reference is to a word that is implied but not explicitly stated. So let's take an example. Transmitting radio signals by satellite is a way of overcoming the problem of scarce airwaves and limiting how they are used. We don't know what is used, okay? Are the radio signals being used? Are the airwaves being used? We need to be specific. A lot of times you know what you're answering, but we don't know. So it says, what is being limited, the signals or the airwaves? You know, so you assume that it's clear, but try to come from the perspective of the reader, okay? Before Mary Grace physically and verbally assaulted Mrs. Turbin, she was a judgmental woman who created her own ranking system of people and used it to justify her self-proclaimed superiority. Whom does she refer to? Is this Mary Grace or Mrs. Turbin? Okay, as edited, there is no doubt. We know that it's Mrs. Turbin. Okay, so always make sure that you're clear. Okay, also sometimes you don't have a clear idea of what is being done. Sometimes we just say it or this, and this is a great example. A lot of times what we're referring to is an idea that's too big for us to understand, so we just say this. But you need to be able to point a finger at what this is or it is, Let's read this example. The troopers burned a refugee camp as a result of the earlier attack. This was the cause of the war. What was the cause of the war? The troopers, the agony, the fact that they did it, the revenge, the destruction of the camp was the cause of the war. You need to be clear. Okay. Missing a comma in a compound sentence. When there are two clauses, meaning there are two complete thoughts in a sentence, you need to include a comma. We wish dreamily upon a star could be a sentence on its own. Then we look down to find ourselves standing in mud could be a sentence or a complete thought to itself. It needs a comma. The words I do may sound simple is one idea. They mean a life commitment is another idea. So you need to include a comma. Wrong word. How many of us have done this? The Pacers played, the wrong version of their best, but that was not good enough. Uh-oh. We need to make sure that we go back. Spelling check, which you should always use, does not always check the correct word. Sometimes it allows you to include this there, even because it's spelled correctly, but it's not the right version of the word. So don't rely on Microsoft Word to do all of your reasoning for you. You need to go back and rephrase it, okay? He noticed the stench of the roses? No, he noticed the fragrance of the roses. A lot of times, too, it's just simply that we don't have our words right. So Paradise Lost contains many illusions. Illusions are like magic tricks. No, it includes many allusions. So be careful, take your time, rest, and then come back to it. Missing a comma with a non-restrictive element. So a non-restrictive element is just not the beginning of your sentence, but again, it's not necessary. Maria, who was president of the club, was the first to speak. If I take out this part right here, I would just say Marina was first to speak. This is not necessary, and therefore we need to include commas. Okay? This can also happen at the end of a sentence, whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end, or it always needs a comma. Luis was forced to call a session of the General Estates. That could be a period, but we're adding more information, which says, which had not met for 175 years. Okay? That's extra unnecessary writing, so we need to include the comma. Kristen's first doll, what was her first doll? Extra information, Malibu Barbie, is still her favorite. Okay? The only time that you don't include these commas is when the information is absolutely necessary. So if I said Mark Twain's best book, Huckleberry Finn, is known and loved by people. If it's something that we could not know or we could not understand the sentence without, then you don't need to include those commas. Okay, I want to point this out right now in case I don't finish all these. You can always go to Exercise Central. I'm going to give you the link to refer to, but this is a great resource for you that gives you lots of information on how to do this, okay? So learning from comma errors, you can spend as much time as you hear. This is a great assistant for you. Okay, wrong or missing verb ending. A lot of times we forget. Eliot used feline imagery throughout the poem. No, he uses imagery. The United States drop 2 atomic bombs. No, it dropped. It has that ed, okay? So we need to make sure that we use the right verb ending. Similarly, we often use the wrong type of verb, but we'll get to that. The wrong or missing preposition. We met in Union Street? No, we didn't meet in Union Street. We mistyped. We met on Union Street in San Francisco, not at San Francisco. Or who called the game yesterday? Well, that has an entirely different meaning than who called off the game yesterday. So make sure you don't have any of those missing words. Again, this is why it's important to take a step away from your writing. Write your first draft. Give yourself a break. The best is have a night to sleep on it so you can come to it totally fresh. And then look for these tiny mistakes that we just make because we're rushing through our thoughts. We know what we meant. It's not like it's a wrong idea in logic. We're just missing something. The comma splice. Okay, I see this all the time. People think that they have one sentence or they just stick one sentence on top of another sentence on top of another sentence using commas. That is not correct, okay? Check all commas used in your draft for comma places, which occur only when a comma separates clauses that could each stand alone as a sentence. You either need to include a semicolon or period, or add a conjunction like and or although. So let's look. Westward migration had passed Wyoming by. You don't put a comma, you put a semicolon. Even the discovery of gold in nearby Montana failed to attract settlers. Okay? I was strongly attracted to her. Not just she had special qualities. That's not two sentences that can be conjoined by a comma. We need some additional information. We're going to include the word for. Okay. Possessive apostrophe. Make sure you include the correct apostrophes. If it's plural, the apostrophe goes outside of the S. If it's singular, it goes inside of the S. Okay? Take some time to look at this. Again, I suggest you go through each of these individually because I'm giving you the link. But here's some information for you. Unnecessary shift in tense. Joy laughs until she cried at the episode of Seinfeld. You want to stick, if you decide you're using present tense, which let me tell you, every essay should be written generally in present tense. And you should stick to present tense as much as you are able, okay? So therefore, we would say Joy laughs until she cries at the episode of Seinfeld. You stick with the same tense. Make sure that you're speaking in present tense as much as you are able. Unnecessary shift in pronoun. Many times we say something like either a big idea and then we just put it, or instead we're talking about one person, but it's too confusing to say he or she, so we use they, which is not good. When one first sees a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe, you are impressed by a sense of power and stillness. Nope, we're talking about one. We're not talking about when you first see it. So we would say one is. If we had known about the ozone layer, we could have banned aerosol sprays long ago. You need to stick to which pronoun you are discussing. Sentence fragment. You guys know you do this. We've talked about it. Sentence fragment basically just means an incomplete sentence. Every sentence needs a subject. Every sentence needs a noun who is performing the work. And every sentence needs a predicate, which is a verb. If you're missing either a subject, which is a noun, or a verb, you have a fragment. Let's look at this. Marie Antoinette spent huge sums of money on herself and her favorites, helped bring on the French Revolution. Her extravagance helped bring on. You need to give me some kind of subject. And I know that you guys think that you don't do these, but you do. Not because you're a terrible writer, but because you're trying to get your ideas quickly down on paper. And that's why it's a draft. But that's also why you need to go back and fix your draft. The most skilled of us revise as we write. We revise mentally as we write. I can tell you all the time, as I'm writing, I'm changing what I'm writing because I can foresee what my issues are and I can go back. Still, once I've written a draft, I always have to go back and rewrite it. Side note, I do this with everything. Anything I care about, a text message, an email, you revise as you go as best as you can, and then you always reread. Okay, using the wrong verb tense. By the time Ian arrived, Jill died. No, she didn't die by the time he got there. She had died. So check your verb tense. Lacking a subject-verb agreement. That means if multiple people are doing it, you have to use the correct version of the verb. So the two main goals of my life is, no, I have two, so the verb tense is are. Okay? Let's look at this. Last one I want to go over. Misplayed modifiers. Read the sentence. They could see the eagle swooping and diving with binoculars. How funny is that? The eagle was swooping and diving with binoculars on? No, that's not right. They watched them with binoculars. Okay, again, spend time going over this website. Consider it. You all do some version of these mistakes, so go back and reread your draft. Good luck!